Well, I wish you guys could see all the shenanigans going on behind the scenes before we got started. I was getting on Coach Griner because we got Will Muschamp of South Carolina on the show, and Sam had him going, giving all these great answers that you guys can't hear. So I was like, Sam, time out. Wait for the show to start. But as I said, we got Will Muschamp on the show, assistant coach on the national champion at LSU. You coached with the Dolphins. You coached in Florida. Now you're South Carolina. You had a lot of experience in the SEC. What's it going to be like for the Gamecocks this coming season?
Well, obviously we had a down year last year. This is certainly what the expectation that we felt like going into the year, how we would play. You know, you lose a 4-year starting quarterback and you're after your first game. And we didn't do enough as a staff. And again, it's my fault because I'm the head coach. We didn't do enough to help that position out, whether Ryan DeCarrion or Jay Urich were playing at that position. So we need to do a better job there. I brought Mike Bobo in, who I think Mike's experience in our league as a play caller. And I've really seen our team benefit from that with his experience as we've moved forward. We were able to get 5 days of spring in before the pandemic hit. And I think he was pretty pleased with especially that room. Colin Hill's been added to that room. Ryan, obviously, is a true freshman, did some really good things for us. So he's really been really pleased with that room. But well, I like our football team. I think we recruited well. I don't think we're that far off. I think, unfortunately, last year we just kind of sputtered a little bit offensively.
Cool. Guys, you have any questions for Coach? Please type them into your comments on YouTube, your comments on Twitter. We'll get them up on the screen and let you guys have a chance to ask Coach a question. Coach, one question we get a lot, and I forgot to ask some of the other coaches. When kids don't get that scholarship offer they want, and I know you walked on at Georgia, became a team captain, is that the end, or do you think maybe there's other things they can do when they don't get the offer they want?
Well, I think, again, being a really good high school football player is pretty cool. And I've always tell everybody that's a great experience. And if you don't get the offer you want, then don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe and walk on somewhere. I wanted to play in the Southeastern Conference. I had an appointment to Naval Academy. I had an appointment to West Point. I had some smaller school offers. But I dreamed growing up in Rome, Georgia, and Gainesville, Florida, of playing in the Southeastern Conference. That's just what I was going to do. My dad was a high school coach and school teacher, so I couldn't afford out-of-state tuition. So he said, this is where you're going to go to school if you're going to play in the SEC. And I had a wonderful experience at the University of Georgia.
Coach, you just mentioned that your dad was a high school coach and teacher, and he was a history teacher.
Yeah.
How did last week's and last week you participated with your team in the Black Lives Matter march? Is there any correlation to his being a teacher and you participating in a social activism?
There's no question. I grew up, if we weren't playing sports or talking about sports, my dad was talking about history. And I was very fortunate. I learned so much. He was a great storyteller. He presented things so well. And whether it was World War I, World War II, or the Civil Rights Movement, he admired Dr. King and talked to me a lot about how he made a huge difference. I.S. Levy Johnson, who's a friend of mine here in Columbia, actually marched with Dr. King. I had him on with our football team in a Zoom call to talk to our guys about the history, because if you don't understand your history, then you're going to have a hard time moving forward with your future. So he did a wonderful job. Pastor Reverend Charles Jackson Sr., who's been at Brooklyn Baptist Church for 49 years, has been the pastor there. Same situation. He's been through the 60s, the 70s, has been through the civil rights movement in the 60s. So those guys really educated our guys. We had a team meeting, and our guys spoke out about their experiences. It was about a 3-hour Zoom meeting, and guys were talking about their experiences, talking about white privilege, talking about all those things and getting those things out, which I thought was very beneficial. But two of the messages that we got from Reverend Jackson and Mr. Johnson was, number one, your right to vote, because that's your voice. And we registered all of our kids that Friday, that morning, to have an opportunity to vote, to voice their opinion. And then we marched that afternoon in a peaceful march. And that was one of the things that Reverend Jackson talked to us about was, peaceful protest. You can make a difference and you will be heard. And I thought it went very well for our team. I was really proud of our guys and the way they handled it.
Also, Coach, one of the things that's beneficial to colleges is being able to get kids on campus to see the university and then to get them up on campus in the summer for football camps. due to the pandemic, you haven't been able to get high school kids on campus this year. How does that affect recruiting, or how does that change your recruiting methods that you can't get kids on campus this year?
Well, I think the camp setting, and it's like the NFL combine. It's where you can coach a guy hard. You can see how he's going to respond. You can see his football intelligence. You obviously can see the measurables, which is always important to verify what you're seeing on film or not verify what you're seeing on film. So we're not able to do that right now. So you've got to trust the evaluation of film. I probably have watched more film since this started from high school recruiting tape than I have in my coaching career to this where we are at this point because of that. Because I think the more film you watch, the less mistakes you're going to make, because you're not going to have a camp setting to be able to see and verify or not verify some of the things that you're seeing on tape. Really relying on the high school coaches that I have great trust for, that I'm able to call and say, hey, tell me what you think. You know, is this guy a good football player? What do you think about his competitive disposition? What kind of guy is? I mean, those are all the things now that you've got to really rely on outside sources other than seeing for your own eyes in a camp setting. So that's kind of where you are, but that's where everybody's having to do right now. It's unfortunate, but that's part of the deal.
Coach, first off, thank you for coming on with us tonight. It's absolutely awesome to be able to talk some football with you. But my main question that I wanted to ask, and it's a little bit off the subject, but I wanted to get your thoughts on players being able to profit on their likeness. And, of course, you know, we've seen the NCAA football games through EA Sports, and obviously that's kind of going on a hiatus. And I know a lot of people really want to see it come back. And, you know, whether it is stadium attire, you know, jerseys sold in the schools or the stadiums or so on and so forth. I just wanted to get your perspective on it. And do you think it's a good or a bad thing for the sport?
Well, I think that, you know, at the end of the day, I want the young men to make as much money as they can based on their college experience. I mean, that's, you know, back when I was playing, you know, they didn't have cost of attendance. My dad was a school teacher. I mean, it is what it is. You got by with what you ate. The food situation has totally changed. Our guys are getting fed extremely well at every stop I've been since we really reformed that with the NCAA. With that being said, it's going to be interesting to see the regulations that are put in place by the NCAA, by state, on what a young man can do, because it can be in a situation where it could get out of hand of, you know, a young man having a signing party and making $100,000. I mean, that realistically probably could happen in our league. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the NCAA approaches this moving forward.
Coach, thanks for joining us. You mentioned a little bit about the pandemic, and as we see, some states are starting to spike and numbers are going up. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on if the season will be shortened, maybe even if they were to move the season. And how do you think that's going to affect you with your workouts, as you've already mentioned? And do you think we'll play?
Well, I do think we'll play. I right now, till July 13th, I think it is. And the NCAA, I think, is voting on June 17th, which is Wednesday, to decide, exactly what we do moving forward. But right now, all we have is voluntary workouts. And at South Carolina, we've got 4 different groups. We've got a 20,000 square foot weight room. So we've got plenty of room. All guys have their one rack. We sanitize the weight room after they leave. They come in the building. We ask them if they've had any symptoms change. We take their temperature. They walk directly into the weight room and work out. We don't shower after it. We don't go in the locker room. They leave the building on the other side. They grab their lunch or breakfast or whatever they're eating at that time. We start at 8. We have a 9:30 group, a 1 o'clock, and a 2:30. And that's going to go till July 13th, which I think we're going to be able then to have some meetings. Personally, and discussion as a staff, I think we're going to continue to do the Zoom meetings with some of our players in the meeting room, but we've got to continue to social distance in that time. But eventually, you're going to have to touch somebody. I mean, just call it like it is. I mean, that's eventually what's going to happen, and see if we move forward. But I think the virus is going to probably determine the timeline. And right now, and sitting as the head coach here at South Carolina, I've got to prepare that we're going to open up on September 5th against Coastal, and that's our preparation at this time.
Well, it's a highly the virus spreads very easily, and we're seeing to a lot of people. So the question is, players have the potential of getting sick, and What are your thoughts on players signing waivers? And there's the other issue of us letting fans come to see games. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll let our legal team and Coach Tanner, our athletic director, handle all that as far as waivers and those things. Heck, I coach football. I'm not an attorney. But and as far as I've always been asked the question, and to me, if it's not safe for the fans to come, how can it be safe for our student athletes? I don't understand that thinking and that thought process. So that would be my answer on that.
Good answer.
Coach, it's great having you on. I really appreciate it.
You're looking good, Sam.
I'm trying to keep up with you, man. Like I said, best looking hair in NCAA, my man. Being a defensive guy myself, I was wondering what kind of advantage do you have opposed to a head coach that's offensive based?
I don't know that you have any advantage. I think that your flavor on each side of the ball, your emphasis on that side of the ball. Obviously, you feel comfortable, and then you got to make sure you hire somebody that's competent on the other side of the ball to do a really good job. So I don't know that there's any advantage, whether it's offense, defense, or even special teams. There's some guys, John Harbaugh was a special teams guy in the National Football League, and he's one of the best head coaches in the National Football League right now.
All right, good deal. I read where you were hoping to have player-run practices this summer. Tell us why you think that's necessary and what that consists of.
Well, you know how it is as a coach. Our guys right now, we only have a handful of guys enrolled in summer school. So they got a lot of time on their hands. They're going to throw. Whether you tell them not to throw or throw, they're going to throw. I would rather them do that at our facility, which they actually have allowed that to happen since that comment came out, that our guys can throw in our facility with our training staff around and our strength staff around. The coaches cannot be there. But our players are going to throw. That's what's going to happen. So I'd rather them doing it on our practice fields with our trainers in place in case something were to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. I always say great teams are led within the players. Good teams are led by the coaches. So when you have that type of identity with your players running practice and in your own facilities, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
One more question for you. Langston asked this a little bit earlier, but I was wondering if we could get in more detail. You guys lost 5 of your last 6 versus one of the toughest schedules in college. 7 games against teams that won at least 8 games. How big a deal is the comeback for the Gamecocks and for you personally this fall?
Well, again, I think the offseason I thought was going extremely well. Paul Jackson, who I hired, that was at Ole Miss as a strength coach, I think did a really good job with our team. I thought we were in very good condition and as fast as we've been since I've been here. Going through spring. So I was pleased with that. I was pleased with the first 5 days. I think Mike Bobo has been a huge addition for us with his experience, his expertise on offense, his teaching at the quarterback position has been as good as anybody in college football in the last 15 years. So I'm really pleased with the progress we're making on offense. We need to be more consistent defensively. I mean, you really look at the staggering stats for us. We were less than 50% scoring touchdowns in the red zone, which if you're not scoring touchdowns in the red zone, you're going to be losing games. We gave up 35 points when the defense was not even on the field, and 2 of those in SEC games on the road, which is very difficult to win on the road in our league, especially if you give up 14 points and your defense isn't even on the field. And we need to be more consistent defensively. We gave up more yards per pass attempt. We were right at 6.5, which is the highest it's ever been in my coaching career. Too many explosive plays down the field. Which obviously creates momentum for the offense, but also creates field position for the offense. So those were the staggering things. And again, like I said earlier, I didn't think we helped the quarterback position enough after Jake went down, and we need to do that more. We ended up throwing it 38 more times than anybody in our league after the 12th game of the season, and that was not a good formula for a freshman quarterback.
Coach, you mentioned Mike Bobo, who is obviously one of the best in the nation. Also seeing that you lost 3 assistant coaches after National Signing Day. Have you been tell me who you've been able to fill those spots with, and maybe how your feeling is with the chemistry with how those coaches have worked together? And also, just a question in regards to assistant coaches. What are your thoughts on coaches? Like, obviously, you've had Bobby Bentley, who was an incredible high school coach, moved up to the college ranks. We've seen Tommy Knott, who's obviously getting it done in Columbia. What's your thoughts on big-time high school coaches and being able to transition up as well?
To me, whether you coach on Friday afternoon, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, or Sunday, Good coaches are good coaches, and you can coach anywhere. It's all, to me, about relating with players and players believing in what you do schematically and what you do from a practice standpoint and what you do from a play standpoint. My brother's a high school coach in Atlanta. He's one of the best football coaches I've ever been around. He's very knowledgeable. So I don't really look at it that way. Bobby did a fantastic job at Burns High School, and he's done a fantastic job for us here at South Carolina, both recruiting and coaching. As a staff, we brought in Tracy Rocker as a defensive line coach, and I've been extremely pleased with Tracy. He has been in our system before and understands how we want to play up front, which, a lot of teams are just, vertical charge up front. We play blocks, and we play double teams, and we're not just trying to go wreak havoc. We're trying to play blocks and play within a scheme and a system. And some D-line coaches aren't like that, and Tracy's been really good for us. He's been outstanding. Rod Wilson's a former Gamecock. Going to come in and coach our linebackers. He was with Andy Reid the last 3 seasons in Kansas City. Just won a Super Bowl. Was the assistant special teams coach there. I actually interviewed him 3 years ago and was really impressed with him. Didn't work out for whatever reason, but I always kept him on my list. And when I had an opportunity to hire him, that was definitely the guy that we were going to hire. We talked about Coach Bobo. He wanted to bring Joe Cox, who actually played at Independence for Tommy Knotts. And I've been really impressed with Joe. Mike told me all along this guy's a really good young football coach. And since he's been here, from a scheme standpoint, from a teaching standpoint, from a relationship with player standpoint, just does a phenomenal job. I've been extremely impressed with him. And then Des Kitchens, obviously, that was at NC State, I want to say the last 11 years with Tom O'Brien and Dave Dorn, kept him, brought him in to coach our running backs, and been really impressed with Des. Extremely bright, hardworking guy. But I'm really like the camaraderie of our staff and how guys get along, and been very pleased with how we've done so far.
I like that you mentioned Joe Cox because he's on my list of probably the top 5 or so absolute best quarterbacks I've ever seen out of Independence here in the Charlotte area. Anyway, that 04 Indy team was incredible. Speaking of your quarterback, though, I want to talk a little bit about Ryan Helinski coming off the knee surgery. He looked really good at times last year. I was extremely impressed with him, and I don't know. I think he's poised for a big year. Wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, Mike was really pleased with the first 5 days and really likes that room. And Ryan, starting with Ryan, Ryan had a scope after the year was over. He was fine, but he had a really good 5 days of practice. Mike, comments where he's extremely bright. He's got really good mechanics. We got to clean his feet up a little bit, but he has arm talent to make all the throws, the vertical throws, the throws you got to zip, the touch throws. But he certainly has the ability to do that. Colin Hill's also a young man that was with Mike at Colorado State and played at Dorman. There, who we think's a really talented guy as well. Jay Urickson, a guy that brings some athleticism, and Luke Doty, as a freshman, came in here from Myrtle Beach High School, and he's probably one of the best athletes on the team. He's a low 4.5, high 4.40, a guy that can really do some things for our football team.
Yes, Coach. South Carolina is the closest SEC program to Charlotte. Is that a big recruiting advantage for you?
I think so. I've been really impressed. And I'll go back to when I was at the University of Florida. DJ Humphreys played at Mallard Creek, and John Bullard played at Crest there for Mark Barnes. And the high school football in that area is outstanding. The 2021, 2022, and 2023 classes in North Carolina are very, very deep. I've been extremely impressed. And I'm not just saying because Sam's on the show, but when he would bring Harding down to our 7-on-7, Myers Park comes down, Huff comes down, Vance, a lot of schools come down to our place. And I've been extremely impressed with the coaches, their players, and it's been a really good area for us. You look on our team right now, Javon Gwynn started for us at right guard last year, who played for Sam there at Harding. You look at Jalen Nichols, who started as a true freshman at right tackle for us and did a really good job there at Myers Park. Trey Kenyon, we played at Monroe before he went to Wake Forest Roseville his senior year. But Monroe to me is still the Charlotte area. Rick Sandage from Concord. So it's been a really good area for us. There's a lot of good players there.
How does the Charlotte metropolitan area high school football compare to the other hotbeds around the country, like in Georgia and Florida and Texas?
Oh, I think it's very comparable. I think that there's a bunch of good players in the area. And again, I go back to the coaches that's been very impressed when those guys have come down on our campus, whether it's in a clinic setting or a 7-on-7 situation to be able to watch them coach and teach their guys. I've been very impressed.
Coach, we know that you were an assistant for Nick Saban, and you also were an assistant for Mack Brown. How would you compare those two coaches?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to be successful, and Coach Saban worked on the defensive side of the ball. Mack was an offensive coach, but Coach was very hands-on defensively with what we did. He's obviously hands-on in special teams, and then just philosophically wanted to be on the same page offensively of what he wanted to be and what he wanted to see. And then both of those guys recruit. Are outstanding evaluators and recruiters. Mack, was more of an offensive coach, spent a lot more time with the offensive staff than he did the defensive staff. Just like Coach Saban spent more time on defense than he did with the offensive staff. But both guys did an outstanding job of running the program, having a heartbeat of the football team, reading the staff, reading the kids, all of those things. And that's why both of them are Hall of Fame coaches.
I wanted to kind of play off of what Gary just asked you, Coach, talking about Mack Brown. Obviously, you were hired as his defensive coordinator at the University of Texas in 2008. I used to coach a year of high school ball in Texas, so I just understand how big, mentioning Texas being the hotbed of talent and us is here as well. But just in pertaining to Coach Brown, you were named a coach in Waiting. You obviously have an incredible relationship with him, known him forever. He comes back to Carolina. You guys end up playing each other first game, going after so many of the same recruits. Have you guys developed somewhat of a friendly rivalry? Obviously, I know you guys want to beat each other on the field and you want to win on the recruiting wars. But just tell me what it's like going head-to-head in the two major Carolina schools.
Well, again, I have, the utmost respect for Coach Brown. I said this before. That the three of the best years I've had in coaching were at Texas. Number one, living in Austin, Texas is a great place to live. But those 3 years, we had a blast. We had a great staff. Coach did a great job, and I really enjoyed my time there. And it's all respect. I mean, at the end of the day, I work for the University of South Carolina. We worked extremely hard to put our best product on the field. We had an opportunity in that game. We gave that one away. I mean, at the end of the day, you give up 2 90-yard drives. And Sam Howell did a fantastic job on the 2 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter. We blow an 11-point lead. There we have the ball 5 times on their side of the 50 and come away with 7 points. So they made the plays and they coached better than we did in those situations to win the game. But I've got nothing but respect for Coach Brown.
Coach, I'm watching you talk and I can't. Your jawline is unbelievable now. Like you look like you've been doing that jaws are size. So tell me a little bit about your working out routine you're doing these days.
It's about 30 minutes jogging. I try and get my heart beating a little bit there. Then we do a light lifting, not heavy lifting, light lifting. I go high reps. I don't do any more of that low rep, high rep stuff.
I hear you, but can you still do a T-stick? Can you fire the feet? Can you do that thing on defense and show those guys how to do it?
Heck no. I say do as I say, not as I can do. I can go ahead and tell you that. And if they're any like the athlete that I am, we ain't recruiting them.
No, boy.
You're a defensive captain, though. You know that. You were good. I know you can hit a speed term. I pay big money to see a speed turn out of you one time.
I may lose an Achilles if I do a speed turn.
That's a very smart guy there. You don't go too fast. A hamstring or Achilles goes out when he gets older when you try to run fast.
One more question for you, because I know you guys beating Georgia last year. That hit a little bit home to you because I knew you and Kirby are, probably one of the closest friends in the NCAA and the coaching world. Do you rub it in a little bit? You text them here and there? Because I remember that time where he sent, it was like a text message about like fans or something like that to you. I can't remember, but you guys go back and forth. So that had to feel good, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I was really happy for our players. That point of the season was not going very well, and our guys, came home against Kentucky and played extremely well off a horrible loss at Missouri, and then to have the open date came at a good time for us. Our guys really played well. When you want to beat a team like Georgia, you got to put your guys in positions to be successful, and when they have their opportunities, they need to make plays, and our players made plays. You look at Israel Muschamp, some of the plays that he made in that game, Javon Kinlaw, J.C. Horn, Ernest Jones. I mean, we played really well. Ryan threw a great ball to Brian Edwards down on the sideline there. So, but we don't rib back and forth. This is hard job that we got, and I know any of those losses are devastating for you as a family. So we don't rib back and forth.
Is any piece of that bush on that shelf behind you?
What's that?
Any piece of that bush from Georgia on the shelf behind you?
Well, I'm at home now, but I got some at the office.
Well, Coach, look, man, really appreciate you having. I mean, I'm tongue-tied. Thanks for coming on. Really enjoyed having you on. Enjoyed the conversation. Good luck to you guys down in Columbia. Hope you have a great season.
I always enjoy talking ball, guys. Y'all take care. Go Cox.
All right, man.
See you soon, brother.
Thanks, Coach.
There you go. That's South Carolina football coach. Everybody's got a smile on their face. Will Muschamp. Everybody's a smile on their face. Sam, you said he was a fun guy. He's a fun guy. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, yeah, he's great. And exactly what you see right there, that's who he is. I mean, he's fantastic to be around. He can light up a room everywhere he goes. And I love hearing that he's working out again. I'm telling you, he can demonstrate better than what he's saying. The man's got a little T-stick still. So I'd like to see that.
What do you guys think of the dynamic between Chris talked about Carolina and South Carolina, but what about Clemson and South Carolina? Is South Carolina still the team and the favorite team in South Carolina? You think Clemson's past them? Was Clemson more like a Duke where they're more of a national program to where North Carolina and basketball is still the state program? Anybody? Oh, we lost Dale. We got no sound on Dale. He's just a talker. Dale, we can't hear you.
I'll say, I mean, I still think Clemson's obviously that power, and I think Clemson. I mean, you just drive through the state of South Carolina, and even in North Carolina and parts of eastern Georgia. I mean, you can go everywhere and see Clemson stuff. I drove to Iowa this past couple of weeks and saw Clemson gear. So I mean, I think Clemson is still that top dog. But wow, you know, you get that Carolina Clemson battle, and don't dare to call them South Carolina. They're Carolina. You know that is just some homegrown football. That is one incredible rivalry, and you know there's one thing to say: that state loves its football.
Yeah.
So what I was saying.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, I had it turned on. I had it on mute.
Okay.
What I was saying is that Clemson has a lot of support in South Carolina. I was kind of getting the impression of you thinking maybe South Carolina had more support, but I used to run routes in South Carolina, and I called on textile plants, and oh my goodness, you had just as much Clemson, maybe more. It seemed like I would come across than South Carolina. So they're probably fairly even split, I think.
Well, yeah.
Gary, since you got on your Mega Psi shirt there, my favorite brother, what are your thoughts on South Carolina and Clemson? Who's the king daddy in South Carolina right now?
Oh, it's definitely Clemson. South Carolina is still looking for consistency. It seems like with their last three coaches, once they get it going, it becomes a rival again. It took Lou Holtz a while to get it going. Took Steve Spurrier a little less time to get it going, and he got it going. And, you know, hopefully this is a breakout year for Coach Muschamp. But it's tough because they're located between Clemson and Georgia, and then North Carolina to the north. It's, you know, they're in a recruiting hotbed, and teams are going. I mean, the best recruits are going to the schools that are performing the best right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Muschamp was the first coach in school history to go to 3 straight bowl games in his first 3 years. He had the most wins of any coach in his first 3 years, which kind of surprised me. So I know last year they had a little drop off, but they had a tough schedule. They played 8 teams or 7 teams, 8 wins or more. So maybe this year they get it turned around. North Carolina today, guys, dropped the dead period, and the public schools were allowed to go play. Charlotte didn't do it. Wake didn't do it. Union County didn't do it. Cabarrus County didn't do it. Dale, was that the right call to make? For the state to let others go, or for the ones that wait, wait? No, I think they should have been let loose because who knows I don't know what's going to come up with the way some areas are starting to spike. But no, I think that like CMS should have stepped up and said, okay, you can go, we're letting you go. So I think that's wrong and I don't think it's because we're going to put them behind. Mm-hmm. I just think everybody needs to be able to get out and try to get some normalcy. Chris, you're nodding. Go ahead.
Well, if you read some of the Twitter traffic from a lot of the coaches in the state, their big thing right now is just let us all play by the same rules. Now, like Grant, I agree that, North Carolina is such a long state. It's about 650 miles east to west. So you've got pockets here or there that have relatively little effect. And then, of course, in the metropolitan areas, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greensboro, so on, you've got a huge effect with the cases of the COVID-19. So I understand why the different LEAs or school systems might go about it differently, but so many of the coaches are just saying, let us all play by the same rules. Let us all go out. Let us all at least have an opportunity to do the right things ourselves as staff, but get these young men or even women out there on the field to compete.
Well, Sam, this is affecting you directly because you're a coach that's being held off the field. I mean, now, be careful now, be careful, but tell me your feelings. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Well, definitely. I think CMS did the right thing. See, CMS is one of the biggest counties there is, or not necessarily counties, but a lot of schools represent CMS. And the problem is you got to get sanitation things to all these different schools. You have to have protocol in place. And it's hard to, get stuff to West Charlotte, then Garinger, then you go across the city and you go somewhere else. So I think that they're going about it, and we actually have plans at the end of the month to do a training on how to clean equipment. So I just think that they're going about it the right way. Yes, I would love to be out there and play and get a little practice in. Love to hit the weight room, but I understand the process.
Okay. Gary, I was looking at the governor's plan to reopen schools and how they want kids to be socially distanced on buses and how potentially they might send high school kids home to do remote learning so they could use the larger schools to move some of the middle school kids there and then move the elementary school kids into the middle schools. Is that a good thing that high schools might remote learn because then they're still in school? Because remember, we always said you have to be in school to have sports. Would that be a good thing for sports? Would that be a negative if high schools had to go remote learning? That's the first part of my question.
I'm not sure. I think they need contact with the teacher, a little bit more hands-on learning. I think, I had a conversation with the high school principal last week, and from my understanding, if things don't improve, we might be in a situation where they go every other day, where they do a day of, in classroom learning, then the next day is virtual. So that way you take a school maybe that has 2,000 students, and you take 1,000 of them will go one day, and then 1,000 of them will go the next day, and they just alternate days like that. So they get virtual and they get contact learning. How that affects athletics, I don't know, because you got to have practice every day. You have games during the week in soccer and volleyball. So I don't know how that affects athletics. The other thing I wanted to mention about the situation is the delay. I think one of the reasons the big school systems are delaying the opening is, like Sam said, they have to get the supplies first. And, you have some school systems that only have one high school, and then you have school systems like Raleigh and Charlotte that have 18. And so getting the equipment for 18 high schools versus one is a lot tougher. But I also think they're waiting on what the next phase is going to be. Mm-hmm. And so that they don't have to come in on this phase, they're hoping that the next phase will be an improvement and they can jump in on the next phase instead of this phase.
Yeah, I'm going to address that first. It is a big mass, and moving a mass is, the more mass there is, the harder it is to move it. One could think that, well, CMS could have started doing something sooner in the cleaning process, but like Gary said, they're probably just waiting, for directives. And unfortunately, for a big system like CMS, I would love to have seen them go on out there. But Langston, what you were talking about as far as going to remote learning, et cetera, if we go to that, I don't think that's a good indicator for what a large sport like football is going to be able to do, because that's all about keeping distance and all the protocols. And that's why they would go to remote learning, why they would go to every other day so they can have less students in, split them up more. And that's probably not a good sign for us with football, but perhaps they can. And maybe after we go around on this, we got something else we can talk about.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dale. And, another thing, just in whether high school students are going every other day or a couple days a week, just we don't know what that's going to look like yet. But I know, and Sam, I know you can really talk to this because you've been at some schools similar to mine. I was at Douglasburg. You've got some students, some young men who need to be in that building every day. They need to be involved. They need to be around that coach. They need, they need that nurturing from a male role model in a lot of instances. So, you want to see them there so that they're eating and you can kind of keep a watchful eye on them. And you want to be out there to practice. One thing, though, that there are a couple things that resonated with me. Coach Muschamp said, if it's not safe for fans to be in the stands, then why is it safe for our student athletes? And they even look at a thing that Q Tucker said with us last week, talking about our own governor, that she thinks that he's going to want to see the schools running successfully first and the buses moving before we even think about getting athletics started. And just some of those things that we're hearing really concerns me about getting this thing even rolling at all and playing sports. I hope I'm wrong, but I certainly have some concerns.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I just love being around students just as much as they would want to be around us. But like you said, it's very important for, like kids at West Charlotte to be able to interact with us daily because we're trying to teach them life tools. And sometimes at West Charlotte, you wear more hats than just a football coach. Sometimes you're a father figure. Sometimes you're a teacher. You got to help them in the classroom. There's a lot of different things that, go into school, but that's why I love it so much because I want to be involved. Like I said, it's building treasures that last forever. I really, really mean that. And being around someone every day, you build a bondship and a family that, you can live out the rest of your life and still communicate with them.
So, guys, I want to ask all of you, this has been on my mind the last few weeks, and I'm going to relate to you real quickly a situation I encountered visiting one of my customers a couple of weeks ago, large manufacturer up in Durham. And when I get there, I have to go through a tent, and they have nurses there, and they take temperature, and then they give us some PPE. One of the things that they gave us was a face shield. And they told me if I had to go onto the floor, in addition to my mask, I had to wear a face shield. So as I've been thinking, especially after that, I don't know why we can't have all kids wear face shields on their helmets, and maybe this gets provided. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a financial thing. I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing my money thing. I think it's a financial thing. I think I had a guy send me a prototype for a helmet that had a mask built into it. I think it's just a financial thing that's going to be a potential stopping point for a lot of school systems, just the sheer cost of it. But yeah, I think on the surface it makes a lot of sense. You guys were talking about remote learning, and my question really was, if long as kids are in school, doesn't that give us a chance to have sports? Because everybody keeps telling me if we're not in school, there's no sports. So at least if there's remote learning, they are technically in school. But then I think Chris made the point, or Gary made the point, if we're having like Monday, Wednesday, Friday school, how do those kids get to Sam's practice on Tuesday and Thursday? Because a lot of kids need the bus to get to school and they're already there. So I'm talking a lot, but you guys respond to it. What do you guys think about all of that?
Yeah, I think you would have to have some type of bus activity for, extracurricular sports after school. And it could be like checkpoints, like this bus is going to be here at this time. And we send out, a protocol, how that's going to go about. I think it can be done if that's what they want to do. But, what's y'all's thoughts?
Don't you guys do that a little bit in the summer, though, to pick kids up for summer workouts?
No, we're not allowed to do that necessarily. At least I don't think so, unless it's like a planned trip that's already been planned in like a bus trip. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
What's the rough number of fall student athletes in one of the CMS schools? What's the rough number you would throw out, Sam?
for one sport or for all?
No, all,
No, all like 7-8 sports.
I would say anywhere from 100 to about 190.
50.
Something like that.
So my thought was that perhaps student athletes go every day, and they don't do an every other day thing. And that's maybe one way to cover it, because getting them back and forth to practice is going to be a challenge.
Gary,
One of the things that you run into with that situation is then you're saying you're putting student athletes ahead of just regular students. You're going to run into that crowd. Okay, why do they get the benefit of going every day and the others don't?
Right.
One of the things I've learned about CMS, having spent my entire career in CMS, is that once they take something away, they never bring it back. Back when we had Katrina, we used to have activity buses, and there was a gas shortage, and they stopped running activity buses, and they said that student athletes would have to find their own way home. Their parents would have to get them. And I remember telling my fellow coaches, I said, watch, if parents successfully pick up their kids and there are not a lot of kids hanging around the school at the end of practice, I say they'll never go back to activity buses because it's a way to save money. And they never did. Same thing when we ran into the recession back in 2009, when they said, well, we're going to make kids pay to play just because we have a budget shortfall. Well, the budget shortfall lasted 2 or 3 years, and they're still making kids pay to play. They haven't gone back to everybody gets to play for free. So, with the added cost of how they're going to have to set these schools up for social distancing, and then to have to run an activity bus every day, you're asking a lot of the school board and the state as far as funding, when you're already going to have budget shortfalls because of all the shutdown of tax revenue.
I got a question just came in as you were talking. I just put it on the screen for Gary. That's the question. Are we going to play like AAU ball, youth ball this year? Because you can't put them on the bus because you got to social distance. I can't put 50 kids on the bus social distance. Great question.
I think parents will do that. I think they will take them to games. I really do. I think they'll carpool. Now, that's most schools. That's not every school. You're going to run into some problems at some schools where you have a lot of parents, single parent homes, where parents can't get off work in time to get their kid to the game. And maybe that's where the activity bus policy comes in to schools as needed.
But then you get into that fairness thing again.
Yes.
So I'm thinking Garinger, as soon as all that was, being played out, I've go to a number of games that's included Garinger over the years. And I have been to games where there were a dozen people in the stands. So all the kids' parents aren't there. So that's going to be tough on some of these programs to have it's a great idea, and it takes care of that social distancing, which probably the biggest chance of any of the players spreading is going to be on the bus and in the locker room. And kids don't like to take showers anymore. When I played, we had to shower after the game. They don't want to do that now. So locker time stuff can be lessened as well. But
it's like youth football. The game's up, everybody goes, gets all nasty in the mom and dad's car. You put the plastic in the back seat and we go home. Malik Creek is not being allowed to go to Atlanta, guys, to the Cam Newton, because they're only going to let teams from Georgia come in. I know we have a lot of cross-state games, and I'm just thinking those are going to be out the window because I can't put 50 kids on the bus and drive to Virginia. I think you're going to have a lot of games that are just local enough where Gary can put his kid in his car, Sam can put his kid in his car. And am I wrong about that?
Well, let me play devil's advocate and maybe put my lawyer hat on. I'm not a lawyer, but just think of it from the perspective of insurance and liability. I just don't see a school system like Charlotte or any school system that is going to allow parents or people other than the school officials to put that kid on a bus and take them somewhere for the liability of, hey, they get in an accident. Maybe accidentally some kid gets in a car with another parent and you're looking at lawsuits. I mean, that's the thing that worries me, that says that they would even nix that idea.
Well, that sounds like we're going to have a lot of local football games then. Sam's laughing. I got another question for you, Chris. Question for Chris. There it is.
I don't know. Spring football makes sense. You know, at this point, I just want to see football, period. But we're already starting to see the spike come back. We're starting to see the numbers rise, and we hoped that by now they would go down. Well, guess what? They're not. And there's probably a lot of factors behind that. But who's to say the number's going to go down by the spring? I've got a close family friend who's a doctor, and he said that he would not feel comfortable even going on a vacation next year or maybe even the year after until there's a vaccine. And he's a doctor, because he said of all the testing that's going to have to take place. And if these numbers don't go down, if there's not a vaccine, who's to say this situation is even better come next spring? You know, I don't want to be Debbie Downer in this topic, but I worry that we're only beginning. I'm scared that I don't know. I'm just scared that we might not even play it all this year. I hate to say that, but the more and more I hear some coaches and some ADs talk, and you listen to some of the standards to get back in school, that's just something that concerns me.
Gary?
I'm thinking if we go to a spring season, then are they going to let the smaller sports play in the fall, say like soccer or cross country or volleyball? I mean, how are they affected? If they move, football is the big daddy, is the king. Everybody knows that. And I can see them saying if it's not football, then we're not doing any fall sports.
Right.
I hope that's not the case. But right now, I think it's 50-50.
I'd be mad about a country runner or a golfer. I mean, I could play those sports in the fall if they have.
Yeah, but you can't flip soccer because you got male soccer in the spring, in the fall, and female soccer in the spring. So, and both probably have about the same amount of fans. In fact, female soccer might have more.
Play double headers.
They could do that.
Tear that field right on up.
If we don't play in the fall, I don't think there's any chance we'll play in the spring, because it'll be worse in the spring than it's going to be in the fall.
Better quit talking that negativity out here.
Talk to us, Sam. Talk to us.
Just saying, what happened to just pray? We need to pray for a vaccine, and I mean, there's got to be a way to fix the situation. And if there's a vaccine, even if you get the virus, we're able to treat it, and I think everybody will be at ease. I'm just hoping and praying that we get a vaccine. I think that would be the key right now.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people praying though.
Yeah, so. I think a lot of the experts think there will be a vaccine by December, January, into the multiple hundreds of millions available. I know over in Europe, they even talked about some of the first responders having a vaccine available to them by fall. So to your point, there may be something coming. But let's say they do have sports, and we asked Q Tucker this last week about fans. I know the NCAA and the pros are thinking about having less fans. We got another question that just came in and put on the screen. How will schools decide who comes to games if fans are I've typed it in wrong, but if fans are allowed in, how are schools going to decide? Go ahead, Dale.
Booster club first, most likely. Booster clubs, all members always get better benefits because they're actually putting their money into the program. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones that are working the games. Not all booster club members, but that's probably going to be one of your ways to make sure you get into a game. But schools have different size lists of booster clubs, so there still will be room to find. And I think they do it like they do for some kind of lottery or something.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned lottery. I mean, you're right, Dale. Booster clubs, but I think obviously parents first, and even faculty, and the stakeholders inside that school who have something to do with it in booster clubs. But obviously, it's just family first, and then we'll figure it out.
Well, I think you'd put the two together, right?
You definitely can. You could do it kind of like college, and just say every player gets two entries to put in the sheet to come to the game. They still got to pay to get in, but something of that nature, definitely.
Coach Griner, what do you say to the parent who's a little nervous? My kid really wants to play for you at West Charlotte, Coach. He's been looking forward to playing all year long. You know, he's worked his butt off. You know, he's been running, he's lifting cinder blocks in the backyard. But I'm nervous, Coach. I'm scared that, you know, he's gonna bring something home to me and Grandma. What do you say to them? I'm on the fence. You know, I'm not against doing it, but I'm on the fence.
I understand. I always tell everybody I don't live life in fear. You got to live life by faith. And if you live your life like worried about what if, you'll never get anything accomplished. And can bad things happen? Yes. But when they do happen, we just tackle that and we move on. There's ways around it. And then, you know, God forbid something happens like that and they bring it home to Grandma and she would pass away. That would be devastating. But I think we cannot live life in fear. And this might be the only opportunity this student athlete has to be able to play. And they might not play another sport. And I wish they play all sports, but you know, you can't just hold them back home. He'll end up wearing you out playing video games and running your electricity bill up anyway. So we need them playing.
So I have to respond. I hear you, but you got to be responsible. You not fear. It's called being responsible, smart and responsible first. And especially if there's a grandmother living in the home, I mean, we can say we can do things on faith, but I promise you, there's a lot of people that had a lot of faith that have died and have done their praying. Certain things are put in man's hands, and man is supposed to be smart enough to make these decisions. And so I really think you got to be smart about this. You've got to weigh your that kid playing priority versus that grandmother's life. Which one is more important? The kid playing, even though it's his senior year, or the grandmother living who might live another 15 years? You have to balance. You have to put those two things on the scale.
I understand what you're saying. Like I said, I just think differently that when it's my time to go, that's my time to go. It's nothing like I can like make a decision and gain 15 more years. I think that when it's your time, it's your time. Now, I do agree we need to have protocol in place and we need to follow that protocol. And that's why I appreciate CMS actually waiting to get all the supplies out to the schools. I think that's very intelligent. And then we're actually we're doing a training. I don't know about other counties, but we're actually doing a training that's mandatory that us coaches have to go to. How do we sanitize things down? How do we go about killing the virus? And then how can we take temperatures? We need to do the whole deal where we can eliminate someone that's coming in with the virus. We can maybe see it. And I know that you're going to say like the asymptomatic, you know, we don't know if they have it or not, but, you know, I think that that's a risk that we'd be willing to take.
All right. I'm going to make Gary and Chris the commissioner and assistant commissioner of the High School Athletic Association. Chris, one of the reasons I always want to have you on the show is I think you want to absolutely the most knowledgeable dudes about high school football, if not the most in his whole state of North Carolina. And Gary, I got mad respect for you because of what you've done for so many years, been successful football, basketball, and just smart. I mean, your Facebook posts on sports, I always read. But you guys, assistant commissioner, it is June the 15th. Gary, at what date do you need to tell Sam, the football coach, this is what we're doing? We're either delaying or we're not delaying, or we're going to try. What do you say to him? And then Chris, as the commissioner, when do you feel is kind of D-Day when we got to make a decision?
I tell Sam that we're going to start July the 6th, like we said, and we're going all in. We're taking all the kids that want to play. We're going to do as much social distancing as possible. We want you to keep them in groups up until August the 1st. When I say groups, I mean position groups, lifting groups. They all stay with the same group, conditioning groups. And then when August 1st comes, if we don't have a huge spike in cases, especially at the high school level, we're going to play football until the governor tells we can't play football.
Yeah, I like that, Gary. Here's kind of the first date, and then I'll go with the D-Day date. You know, if you can go through the conditioning, we've had the dead period lifted. We've got most of the school systems allowing conditioning to take place beginning here, most of them the first week of July. If that can take place safely, I am 100% on board with an August 1st commencement of official practices, and we would do our best to start the season on time. Now, I know I'm playing the commissioner role, but I'm going to address something that Q Tucker said last week. If practices are not allowed to begin prior to the August 17th beginning of school, again, mandated by Governor Cooper, then I'm going to set a D date that we have got to practice. I mean, you've got to start the season. When I say the season, practice no later than September 1st. That gives schools 2 weeks to adjust to the new normal of going back, being on campus, start athletics September 1st, shoot for the 4th week of September to begin games, play a conference slate. It'll probably only be about a 6-week season, but it gives some competition. And that would probably be my drop dead D date of September 1st to have any kind of a football season.
Sam, should we just do that right now?
Yeah, I'm down with that. That would definitely work out. I mean, these guys sound pretty smart. I feel like they hanging out. These guys, yeah, they definitely went to a trivia night, like I said, with Q Tucker, and they got some pointers from her. But I agree, and there's definitely, I think Dale could be very involved as well, just because he's very intelligent at being, cautious, very cautious.
What's the reason?
But which
absolutely
very good. But I think there's a way that maybe we can get government help to get gloves. Every kid has to, because they wear gloves a lot of times in football anyways. And maybe they take a class on how to use the gloves, how to take them off, sanitize down. Maybe the shield thing gets in place. I don't know. It might be hard to breathe with that thing going across here. It's already hard enough to breathe with the shield up here, I think. But there's different ways of going about it. Maybe we have to have more thorough testing before they come into practice. They have to go through a protocol, and I think that we'll be a little bit safer that way. What do you think, Dale?
Well, I think obviously a good protocol in place of testing, continuous. You have to do that all the time, every day. I think when Chris said September 1st, I got to think, we got to have 2 weeks. And so I was just trying to think if we couldn't even wait a little bit later if we had to. But if we probably can't go September 1st, we're probably not going to be able to go at any time. But I'm very cautious just simply because you can spread this thing to somebody else. And that's where we have to be cautious. So any PPE that can be, that we can come up with, even a face shield with a little bit of holes in it. It still maybe lets a little out, but at least it eliminates some. I don't know what kind of protection.
Could you play football with a cotton mask on, Sam? Could you play because you're not running but for so many seconds at a time?
Being vegan, I know I could get it done now, but I don't know, brother.
You can lift the mask up and breathe, because I wore a mask for 10 hours when I was in that plant. I kept that mask on for 10 hours, but every once in a while I'd pull the edge so I could get some air.
Yeah. I mean, I heard Coach Muschamp. He was saying sooner or later we got to hit each other, and I think that's the same.
Yeah.
For schools. Sooner or later we can contact and separate and do everything we want to do, but sooner or later football is a game of contact. And
that's okay. It's got to come from here. Yeah. It's going to come from here unless the kids get it on their hands. So if the kids don't get it on their hands, then it's got to come from here. And then the tackle's only going to be bad. So you do a face-to-face tackle, and the guy jumps out. And
I was asking if they could wear a mask when they were playing. That might, help alleviate some of those droplets from coming out. Guys, I know there's a lot of people right now that are practicing together. I know there's a lot of basketball players who are going 5-on-5 together. I mean, there's some people out there doing it as it is. I mean, so are we? The kids want to do it. Should we allow them to do it? At least give them a try.
Yes.
Yep. Unless they got grandma at home, like Dale said,
Well, again,
Ohio State's going to have waivers. I mean, we will have waivers like that, I would imagine, where you say, I'm going to play and I take these risks and play.
That's a good point. I like the waiver idea. I'm all for it. What I heard about the virus is this, that, it's scared of collision sports, so it wouldn't mess with us anyway. So.
Sam, you see it on the screen. Have at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see that. The good thing is, CMS, we'll play we can play so many different teams. We can still have a full schedule. But, other counties, I think that'd be a tough
Now
deal.
you play in the cross-county conference. You play Iredell schools in your conference. So in the Southwestern 4A has Cabarrus County schools in their conference. So and Union County. So it's that could be a little problematic if it happened. But I think geographically those schools are close enough where that might not be the case. But like Richmond County coming to play a Charlotte school is going to be tough. And if that's the case, there's no playoffs, right, Chris? Yeah.
No,
What's
yeah.
the playoffs?
We got so many
Maybe we found-
conferences that are cross county. I'm sorry.
Maybe we have a True City Championship, which would always.
I was just about to say that, Langston. Maybe we finally have city champions.
There you go. That's what I always wanted to have. So guys, we're gonna leave it there. It's a great discussion tonight. It was really cool talking to Coach Muschamp. We're gonna put Coach Griner under the gun one more time. He's gonna pull off a really, really big fish, maybe next week.
We're gonna try. We're gonna try. All right. Well, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll definitely catch you next week as we're gonna keep it going with Talking Preps.